How you doing, man? I don't know if you can hear me okay. Hey!
There we go. Excellent. Little countdown timer, a little bit of music to get the vibe up for Friday afternoon. Thought that might be kind of fun today. A little something different, you know?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. It's a nice way to kick off the end of the week as we look at the weekend. I hope that nobody's got to work tomorrow
Right.
and that everybody just gets to chill out,
Exactly.
especially as we finally get to the summer months, man. And in California, it's like we are really feeling the summer.
Yes. I mean, it's been a little cool the last couple of days here in the East Bay, but I know that like within weeks, the temperature is just going to jump like up, especially in your area. It's going to start skyrocketing pretty fast.
Oh yeah, like we're already getting ready for our first 100-degree day. I'm still in like summer sweater weather, so
It's not quite
I'm
there
still
yet,
getting
but
away. Not there yet, but I will say this: it's getting hot. It's funny though too because I've been talking about all the trips that I want to take this summer, and seeing that this is the Kessel chat, and seeing that we spend a lot of time talking about Star Wars. I've actually been thinking about doing kind of a Star Wars roundup
Ooh, I
here
like
in
that.
California.
Okay.
I have always the a really common thing that you can find right now on YouTube is the people that go on tours of Death Valley, so that way you can see like, oh yeah, this is where they filmed the canyon scene
Oh
with R two
yes.
D two.
Yeah, yeah.
This
Mm-hmm.
is where this they filmed this here. They filmed the walk up scene to Jabba's palace here, and you can go to all of those sites. And I've been wanting to do that for a while. I've been thinking about hitting that up, and then hitting up not where I thought they filmed Return of the Jedi. I thought that was closer to Napa. It's actually further up and
Yes, it's
east.
north of
And
it's just north of the top end of Sonoma County.
yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes. And so I've been thinking about doing that as well. So like hitting up Endor, hitting up Tatooine. Um Monterey kind of feels like that's some type of Camino. But then other than that,
I
like
can see
yeah,
that.
like
I can see that.
I'm excited for the nice weather and like really trying to get out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, now that you got me thinking about that, is hold on a sec. Um, you have me totally curious now. It's where is it?
Yeah, because
That's
I always
Ranch.
thought the Return of the Jedi was filmed in the forest that's right outside of Napa. Because
Nope.
you got to remember, at that time, George Lucas is funding these movies himself, and so he's like, "Yeah, like we're running out of money, guys. We're not going to build the whole Chewbacca, all the Wookiee costumes. Cut them in half. They're Ewoks now." Endor, it's like right outside. It's like in my backyard. That's where Endor is. Like, is that going to save us some money? Um, uh, George, we don't have enough food here today. Don't worry, guys. I brought some boxes of Cheerios. It's amazing the shoestring budget that they got
Yes.
Empire and Return of the Jedi off the ground with. But even Star Wars, like the original Star Wars, is just filmed with almost nothing, and it's still one of those things where I feel like the boundaries of that world played like of that time made that world what it looks like.
Yep.
I think restrictions really can bring the best out of art.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I but that said, yeah, I've been thinking about doing a whole like
Dude, that'd be so much fun.
trip. Yeah, man,
I
like
think.
I've always wanted to go and do that too, like the European
Mhm.
and North African trips as well too, like kind of
Yeah,
see everything for what it is.
absolutely. I think I was double checking here, but I'm pretty sure that the area they filmed in was in Humboldt County, which is near the California Oregon border, but north, like on the 101 that way,
Right
or
on.
give or take. And I think it's actually near the city of Eureka. So quite a bit
Mm-hmm.
north of Sonoma County, a couple hours, hour or two north on that way. But yeah, it's not near the coast, but it's kind of on the way to Oregon on the 101 in that way. I think they even have, I think there is still some like leftover set stuff, like rope bridges or whatever else they've left in place. You can actually like, it's not exactly the set, but it kind of like slightly recreate the feel, so you can kind of walk around and get a sense of how high up filming was done and stuff like that, which is really rad. You should totally do it.
Oh yeah, no, that is still available. You can still see some of the garbage that they left there. I know that they left so much
Really?
behind in North Africa where they were filming Tatooine. Like that's why
That
so
was
much
in
of that is
Tunisia, I
still
think, right?
there. Yeah, like
Yep.
the Tunisia location spots, they basically left everything as it was.
Oof.
And I always get this impression, like Jeff, I don't know if you and I have ever talked about this, but I've worked on some very amateur movie sets, and I've been able to be affiliated with some larger productions. And I will tell you, like, you will say pretty much anything to basically get the ability to film in a location. Oh, are you guys going to track out your garbage? 100% we will. Are you going to do this for like, yes, absolutely. And then when you're done filming, it's like, check the gate, moving on.
You sound like when you say it, you sound like Taika Waititi, because he's been interviewed saying like,
Oh,
"How do you get it?" Like you tell them whatever they want, whatever they want to hear. Yes, they say, "Are you gonna do?"
whatever it
Yes,
is.
yes, absolutely,
Yes.
we will do that. We will do it for you.
No. and that's why like the one of the for anybody that has oh, I see Ken's here, by the way, that's awesome. Grizzly Creek Redwood State Park, that is one of the big filming locations that's there. And so yeah, I can't say enough like how awesome it is to be able to go and check out some of these locations. A movie that I loved and I didn't know that I was going to have this intersection happen in my life is I'm a big fan of the movie Predator. I have a niece named Dylan, and every time I see her, I go Dylan. And For anyone that watches the movie Predator, you'll know what I'm doing. But there is a really funny story, which is they had this helicopter that they brought in as a prop, and it's supposed to be a crashed helicopter. And if you go to Puerto Vallarta, where they filmed a lot of Predator, what's really funny is so much of so they left so much behind, including this giant helicopter that they just like threw it in the trees. And yeah, like that stuff's all there. Movie location shooting is known for just like, yeah, we're just gonna leave. Oh, we brought a giant set piece, believe it, it's fine. And
Jeez.
now of course it's a thing where it's like, oh yeah, you'll go on tours and they'll like point it out and they'll be like, oh yeah, that's from that movie. And really it's like garbage they didn't want to haul away, but now it's like a thing that people can't wait to see. So yeah,
That's
I'm
too
still
funny.
blown away though. I think if you can this is the summer. This is gonna at least on the western United States. There's gonna be a lot of really great weather for being able to travel and kind of see these things. Put it on your bucket list and check it out. And even though we have since totally debunked the claim that those large cargo holders outside of San Francisco are where the
Sorry.
AT-ATs are, yeah, that is it's still something really cool to behold. So maybe on your way from Death Valley up through the bay to get to Endor, you
It
can
will
go and see
feel
that.
like you're looking at a bunch of AT-ATs in Oakland Harbor. It will absolutely feel that way. I'm sorry that they weren't actually the inspiration, but they definitely look like it. So
They definitely look like it.
head canon is still canon in some form, so it's okay.
Dude, headcanon is all that matters. I will tell you right now, like there are parts of the Star Wars movies that I'm even like, you know what, I'm just gonna let that one pass. It's fine, it's totally cool. Caravan of Courage, 100%. Yeah, just put that in my head canon. We'll just keep going.
Exactly.
But Jeff, I know that today it's a Friday. It's a Friday before you and I also start doing some traveling,
Yes.
and we just wanted to keep today really kind of light, do
Yep.
kind of a roundup of kind of fun Friday Star Wars items, especially because we are in the great pause between a lot of when some things have ended and when a lot of new stuff is
Mm-hmm.
about to take off, and of course that's been affected by some of the production delays that are associated with the some of the production delays that are associated with the current Writers Guild strike
Yes.
and the potential Screen Actors Guild strike that looks like it might actually happen now too. So it seems like there might just be this pause in a lot of Star Wars
Yeah.
media, but there's still a lot of really cool things that are coming out. There was some Nothing Burger news on Taika Waititi's Star Wars. There is some still discussions by actors like Mark Hamill's recently been in the news, kind of talking about um, uh, his thoughts regarding Star Wars fandom, which I thought was really interesting. But yeah, Jeff, happy to kind of kick this off where you'd like to go.
You know what? I'm okay. Let's start with something I like the nothing burger. I like this even I like the statement the nothing burger. Let's do this. Let's do that first, and then I've got a question from someone on TikTok that I wanted to run by you as well. So do the Taika Waititi stuff.
So Taika Waititi, everybody since the Taika Waititi Star Wars was announced, everybody's been saying like, when is it happening? When is it coming out? Like when are we going to see anything that's associated with it? And there is a hilarious news report that came out on this, and it's the title of it, and I'm probably going to butcher it, is the Taika Waititi Star Wars script sure sounds like it's a script. That's like the only news that's really come out on this, is that Taika Waititi, it sounds like, was kind of pulled aside. There was a lot of questions about what he's working on, and a lot of this is stemming from the fact that Star Wars has announced a slate of projects that are all coming out. Everything that is the future of The Mandalorian to The Acolyte, everything, every major piece of information that's coming out, and all of their big projects. And Taika Waititi's Star Wars was not included in that list, even though he is still contracted to do this.
Mhm.
They have artwork that's come out that looks like that Flintstones Star Wars logo, where it's like the Star Wars logo, the original Star Wars logo, just kind of in rocks. And the nothing burger of it is basically Taika Waititi saying, "Yeah, I'm still working on this. Like, I'm trying to develop characters and a storyline. I've got a lot of ideas. Some of those ideas have been leaked out, but nothing has been committed or confirmed." It's just funny because I don't know of another director or another set of producers or writers, whether it's Damon Lindelof, who's currently involved, or for a time, the guys behind Game of Thrones,
Mhm.
Dan and Dave, they were involved until they
Were.
totally ruined Game of Thrones. Um, there isn't someone that I
There's your
feel
hot
like
take,
has so
everybody. There's
much.
your hot take.
Yeah, oh, 100%. Like, if, come at me. Like, you liked season 8 of Game of Thrones? No. Guess what, everybody? Cersei was Emperor Palpatine. That doesn't make any sense. Oh no, wait, or maybe it's Daenerys. Who knows? Um, the 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 real interest that I think there is for the Taika Waititi Star Wars is unbelievable. Like, everybody's like eager to see this, even
Yeah.
after the mixed reviews of Thor, the latest Thor movie. Like, I'm really excited about it. I loved what he did with Thor.
Mhm.
I Jojo Rabbit. If you haven't seen it, and you're a David Bowie fan, oh my gosh, you got to go see this movie. It's so touching. It's such a great movie. I can't wait to see what that movie is going to be. And I think that that's the reason why this is such a nothing burger, is that everybody keeps asking, like, what's going on with this movie? When is it coming out? And there isn't any news on it. And so it's funny to see so many Taika Waititi headlines, Taika Waititi Star Wars, and it's nothing. There is no news. It's just basically Taika Waititi was asked how his Star Wars is doing, and yeah, there's no news there. So we're all just still waiting with bated breath, I guess, Jeff. And
Yep.
that's why it's like a nothing burger. It's like everybody's talking about it, and there's nothing
To talk
about
about.
it.
There's nothing there yet. I know I'm showing it in the doing a little screen share here, and everyone can kind of see the trailer for Jojo Rabbit running right there. There's the image. Check it out if you haven't watched it. It's I love. I mean, it looks problematic if you don't listen to the audio. I'm gonna be
Yeah, I
honest.
mean, obviously
Looking at this,
you gotta know the background for what's happening with Jojo Rabbit, and obviously there's a heavy amount of satire, and satire out
yes,
of context always looks like something else.
yep,
But I will just say this: like, Taika Waititi brought new life into the Thor series. Really played to the strengths of Chris Hemsworth. Um, um, uh, I really like what Thor Ragnarok is like, maybe my one or two Marvel property. Like,
yeah. Oh, agreed.
that is, oh, I mean, that what he did with that movie was great. I think that's why we're all so excited, because it's Taika Waititi has so much creativity. He's already in the Star Wars universe as what is it, IG-11, and I just think that there is so much hope that he could bring a lot of that creativity in telling a new Star Wars story. So much of what we've been getting from Star Wars, and I hate to say it this way, is kind of like franchise fatigue. Like,
Yes,
I'm actually enjoying the fact that we have this pause,
I am too.
because it's I feel like it's gonna like be great for creativity. Like, right now, I feel like Star Wars is almost like a sponge that's getting wrung out a little bit too much.
Mhm.
It needs a lot of new life, and that's why I'm excited to see what Taika Waititi is gonna do. And although I've said terrible things about Damon Lindelof in the past because of Prometheus, I think he's come a long way, and I'm really excited to see what he could do with the future Ray movie
Yeah,
that it sounds like he's working on.
I'm excited, and we've talked about this before, and I'm 100% with you. I don't think I ever thought about it this way till you originally brought it up. But the idea that we've had a bit of in the MCU has shown us that there you can have too much content sometimes, or not too much content, but that it can come out too quickly next to each other. And I think this break right now, in unintentional break, which good for what it is for those people, is actually going to end up being really, really good for Star Wars. It will, like you said, foster more creativity, things like that. I mean, I've been trying to catch up on. To be fair, I have a couple Star Wars books to read right now that are sitting there that I want to read, but I've been trying to catch up on the Mistborn trilogy from Brandon Sanderson that a friend of mine sent me. And so I finally bought the audiobook for the second book to get through it because I was realizing I wasn't just sitting there reading. But like this just came in the other day, so this is part of the ongoing High Republic manga series that they've had running. It's called The Edge of Balance. This is The Edge of Balance. It's called Precedent. So it's part of phase. It's the first manga produced in phase two. I have the other ones here. There were two produced in phase one. These two right here, which are fantastic. If you like manga or are okay with this style of artistry and storytelling, they are fantastic books. And then Precedent has been really good. I started reading that yesterday. Really, really good with my son.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And I just noticed that my audio and my video looks like it's a little out of sync, and I'm not sure why. But
Oh no, you're doing great,
they're
man.
fine. Okay. But yeah, it's kind of been nice because it's given me a chance to actually go back and like catch up on those books, catch up on some comic books that I've been wanting to catch up on, and I like that because it feels like it gives a chance to become more immersed in the slower paced stories, and it's slower paced only in that they're not movies or TV shows where you're done in an hour and the thing is over.
Yeah.
So like running series of comics or books where you can kind of be immersed in a story for a few days as you read through a book and get a chance to think about it, go to bed, wake up the next day, read for 30 minutes. I think this is really good for anybody who is interested in participating in Star Wars as a set of stories in these ways. It can help you, I think, appreciate when the next movie or whatever comes out for those things as what they are, a new story, a new thing. They don't have to just constantly be happening. And I'm not throwing shade at the MCU, but I just think we talked about this before. Quantumania, as an example, reintroducing or
Yeah.
introducing. We've already been introduced to Kang at the end of the Loki series, which was a great introduction to the character, phenomenal introduction to the character. Quantumania was
Yes.
like, here's one other variant who's really not great. Here's what happens. But it was one of those movies that I was entertained, for sure. But I don't think I'll ever go back and watch it again because it was just okay. It happened. It just felt forced. It felt like these things are just being dropped upon us constantly, as you said. And I do enjoy the stories. I do enjoy watching them, but I'm ready for a bit of a break. And I'm actually very excited that the Secret Wars. I didn't even realize until recently Secret Wars was actually going to be a limited time series that they run on Disney Plus as
Yes.
opposed to a movie. I'm like,
An
oh,
ongoing.
I'm so happy about that because then it could be a slow consumption over a period of time. But to diverge a little bit, so flipping back to Star Wars for a minute, a question came through. I wanted to throw this out. So two questions
Oh
came
yeah.
through on TikTok that I'm going to make some other videos on that I'm excited about. And Mike, who I think is actually still here with us right now, Mike, I'm going to bring up your comment that you put on TikTok for me, and thank you. His question was this: his comment was, I'd love to hear your thoughts on Star Wars structure. In what ways does Star Wars resemble an epic like the Iliad or the Odyssey? And I thought that was a perfect question to ask you, Ryan.
Oh my gosh. I mean, like, yeah, it's very much like the Iliad. It's very much like the Odyssey. It's very much because it borrows so much from those tales. Um, I mean, I know that we've talked so much about Joseph Campbell in the
Mhm.
past and Hero with a Thousand Faces, but yeah, I mean, the Epic of Gilgamesh. All of the great old stories surface here inside of Star Wars, especially inside of if you just look at the original Star Wars: A New Hope movie,
Mhm.
that is the classic hero's journey where a nobody from nowhere is brought forward on an adventure to become a hero. There in if you look at things like the Iliad, or even if you look in the Epic of Gilgamesh, you'll find very classic things that are there. So one of those things is there is this larger conflict that is then forcing this person who will become the hero into action. Almost immediately, they reject the path. That's a very common part of the hero's journey. The call is the hero is beckoned, and the hero says no. I can't do it. And then they meet an advisor. That could be a advisor like Obi-Wan Kenobi, who's just an older person that has seen things, or it's as George Lucas might say, the frog on the side of the road, which is Yoda. And that person, oh yeah, this is Joseph Campbell's A Hero with a Thousand Faces. As Jeff knows, and I'm sorry because I can go on and on and on like this forever, and it's just because I have my original degree in English. This Star Wars is borrowing so much from those stories. The fact that Luke gets a talisman, which is his lightsaber, he gets a talisman that allows him to fight evil. That is also a relic of the past that will give him special insights. That is because that lightsaber is his father's lightsaber, and his father is Darth Vader. Spoilers for all of Star Wars.
The basis of
then,
everything we just spoiled for you. Sorry.
you can even use Dan Harmon, who's very famous for Community or Rick and Morty, which a lot of these facets and ideas also come up. Dan Harmon has taken the hero with a thousand faces and the hero's journey or quest and actually map that into the story circle, which there's a really cool video that uses Star Wars to basically talk about this, and it borrows and it shows how stories that you see like in the Aeneid or Ulysses, Odysseus and the Odyssey, how those journeys are very similarly seen either in one movie like Star Wars, where the hero has to go into the chaos world with their talisman, get some knowledge while sacrificing something. Luke sacrifices so much. He sacrifices his safety, he sacrifices his aunt and uncle, he sacrifices Ben Kenobi, and ultimately he has to sacrifice his view of the world, which is limited, to see this much larger story. By the way, you can apply that to just Star Wars, or you can apply it to like all of the trilogy. Like for example, they have to go and get he sacrifices his hand. I see Ken Alger put that in. Another really common thing that happens, especially in Greek tragedies, is the journey to the underworld to bring back a loved one. This happens in so many stories, but the best version of that happens in Star Wars is when Luke, Leia, and Chewbacca and Lando have to go and recover the soul of their lost friend Han Solo. They have to go to the gangster underworld, but if there is no other example of the underworld, it's Jabba's palace.
Yeah.
It's gross. It's not cool, and yeah, like there's so much that's being borrowed. And of course, Star Wars is the only one that does that. The Matrix does that. And they borrow from multiple religions. Star Wars borrows from multiple religions. The virgin birth, for example, is a thing that's found in Christianity, but it's also found in like Polynesian cultures. The original one of the original heroes that's in Hawaiian culture is also a virgin birth. It's usually that the hero is marked different from their birth. Like Caesar. Caesar is born different. Like all of these heroes of old, whether real or fictional, or just they've been made into heroes like Caesar. They are usually have some type of a different birth story, and so all of these things, and we have a friend, that Joanna, who could talk about this far better than I can, but all of these stories overlap, and they're all borrowing from themes that have really been throughout time. So yeah, like Star Wars is doing that. It truly is a long time ago, just not in a galaxy far away.
Exactly. I love it. It's a fantastic answer.
Yeah.
Mike, I hope that helped. He just threw up the comment. Oh my goodness, like Orpheus and Eurydice.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, that's even the whole like the things that you sacrifice. That's why it actually would have made more sense if Han died in Return of the Jedi. Because he's been living so long in the underworld that his reprieve, just like Persephone, like his reprieve into the land of the living is only temporary and he has to go back. That actually would have made more thematic sense
Mm-hmm.
for Han to die doing something really great. But I also understand that, hey, you got to sell them action figures, so you want to keep them alive.
So there you go.
But anyway, I'm sorry, Jeff. I can keep
No,
going
no,
on
no,
and
no,
on
dude.
about this.
That's perfect. That's exactly what I want to talk about that too in a separate like TikTok. But I thought since Mike's here, it'd be great to get the question out there and have an answer. And it's fascinating. I have been on and off. I've been reading this a little bit. Oh, yeah, you're welcome, Mike. Glad we could help. On and off, I've been reading parts of Hero with a Thousand Faces. It's a little challenging to get through. But
Oh,
I
it's
do
because it's like English theory, you know.
exactly.
There's
Yeah,
so much.
it's actually Joanna, our friend Joanna, who's been on the show before. She was the one who actually said she could recommend some other works and some stuff she's even done that help you understand what he's trying to say, sort of like Cliff Notes versions to help you understand what he's talking about, because it can be a little challenging to understand, but or to get through. And he tends to talk almost in prose to set up his point. So he's going to say a
Yes.
point, but to make the point, he tells you a bunch of other things on the page, then makes the point. And getting through all that and the connection between the first sentence and the last can be challenging sometimes. I will say that when you do start to read this or understand a little bit of it, as you were describing, you start to see a lot of other movies and books and stories that we've encountered just in pop culture alone in the last 20 years, 30 years, through that lens. And how many of them, like, wow, this is literally just using this common methodology for getting through a story. It looked different than the other stories I've watched, but they all can use that. And Joseph Campbell did not create this. He is just codifying
No.
things that have been used by
Yeah.
classic authors and poets and playwrights and things like that for many millennia. He just codified it into a way that everyone can kind of understand and see how they were all put together, and then use it almost formulaic at that point. But then like a template you can base off of, which is really cool. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, it definitely changes the ways that you'll watch movies. Like, I try to read as much as I watch movies, and I will tell you, there's like some, whether it's Spider-Man or anything. Again, I'll use The Matrix as an example. You can start to see like story beats that it's like, oh, that's got to happen now. Oh, he needs to reject the path. He's being told he's the hero, and he needs to reject the path.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's that's a really great question. And again, like the more that you also see in Shakespeare, like it's no accident that there in episode 2, the theme Anakin and Padme's music theme, their cue is called Across the Stars. And that's because they're star-crossed lovers, just like Romeo and Juliet.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, even the mise en scene, which is like how the image is put together, like on film. The when Padme dies, spoilers for Revenge of the Sith. When Padme dies, she looks like, and Jeff's heard me talk about this a lot. She looks like Ophelia from
Yes.
Hamlet. She's got flowers in her hair. She's kind of draped in blue. That's not just because it's a sad color. It's because it's to mimic the drowning of Ophelia. Who kind of is lost to her love. All of this just keeps playing up. It doesn't diminish in any way your ability to watch this stuff. It actually just enhances it. It's like you're like, oh wow, like I can. It's like seeing something multidimensional.
It brings into modern culture a reference to what classic authors and writers, like literally from antiquity, would have
Yes.
used in the way that they would write classics like the Odyssey and the Iliad and others of that nature. And it if you allow yourself to see that, it brings a connection between those things. It creates a connection in a way that makes those classical stories that may not be of interest to you still relevant. Like you can watch it and go, oh, like you just said, if you understand that a little bit, that you don't have to even understand all the nuance, but to understand that all these things were picked for a reason, and much of it was inspired by what Joseph Campbell, as an example, is able to explain or break down about those original stories. So it's not his work; it's him explaining and helping you to understand what the original works were like, and then bringing that into what you want to watch, builds a bridge between these two different eras of human society, so that we can. For me, it basically lets you say that this is how I get to really appreciate watching or reading the Iliad. Because if I try to go through and read it, it's like reading a textbook. I don't really understand it. It's just my reading skills are not trained to really be able to get through something like that. But I can still essentially enjoy the theme and the different components of it through a modern culture uh, medium, which is film and
Yeah.
this type of storytelling. I'm still essentially enjoying the basics of the Iliad or the Odyssey, just in a different way. And I think that's really beautiful. And we can allow that to happen. It doesn't have to, it's not a replacement for the other. It's just a different way to enjoy that type of storytelling.
No, I completely agree. And like I said, like there's a really great video if you don't want to sit down and read Joseph Campbell's Hero with a Thousand Faces, which I could not agree more with Jeff. It's like it is a tome.
It is.
I
I
mean,
think the
you're
first page took me like 3.5 hours to like reread like 4 times, because I'm like, I get like a paragraph or two in it. I'm like, wait, what? Sorry, what did you just?
yeah.
Hang on, go back. I'm totally lost now. Like, were you making a point? Where's the connection? I'm so confused. I actually had to message our friend Joanna a couple times, like, what am I missing here? She's like, oh, he's going off on a tangent, and then he comes back, then another tangent, and he comes back. I'm like, so I can almost ignore these two sentences and just put these. She's like, yes, and then it'll kind of make sense. I'm like, oh my god, okay.
Yeah, that book is written more like is fewer a student in his class. Like, I
Yes,
mean,
one
that
hundred
is
percent.
exactly the way that it feels. But there's a lot of really great YouTube videos. If there's two things that I really like about Star Wars is how much it does borrow from
Mm-hmm.
those stories, which no joke. Like, check out the I was looking for it while you were talking. I can't seem to find the link. There's a YouTube video on the Story Circle, the Dan Harmon Story Circle, and Star Wars, using Star Wars as an example. Hero with a Thousand Faces and Star Wars. There's tons of things on that. And then just to understand too, then how those are represented not just in the story, but like I said, the mise en scene, like how it like appears on the film. There's a lot of really great analysis that's done on um, like what is being shown in the filming, like how things are shown, how characters are dressed. You'll even notice too how like Luke Skywalker's clothing is changing because of the
Mm-hmm.
fact that he's becoming more experienced. It even borrows things from, like, not just martial arts culture
Yeah.
and Eastern culture, where you see so much of that in obviously the Jedi clothing, but even things like how when you first meet Luke, he is dressed in all white. That's a very common callback from like early like 1920s cinema, because those were shot in black and white, so you only had the two colors that you could really work with. But that's also because by the time you see him in Return of the Jedi, it's all black. His whole outfit is black, and that's because his journey has changed him. His clothing isn't just a reflective of like, oh well, it's black like Darth Vader's clothing. No, it's because it's almost like a white belt to a black belt.
Yeah.
He has been changed by that journey. And again, like the white that's underneath, because he has that little flap that opens up, that's also by design. There's nothing that ends up in a picture, in good pictures I should say, that isn't by design.
Right.
Even what's really cool is to Mike's question, and I'm sorry we're starting to rat hole on this a little bit, but to Mike's question about how those old stories appear in like the script and the storylines in Star Wars, also really cool. Same thing happens with music. There is a funeral dirge that is very common. It's I mean, I'm terrible at reproducing sounds, but it's this. It's ha 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 like that. It's up and down like that. It's a very old, like archaic funeral dirge, and that if you need to recall it, if you know the movie The Shining, that is the theme of the movie The Shining. Is that music is played often in Star Wars. It's played when Uncle Ben and Aunt Beru are
Mm-hmm.
found dead. That music that happens, that cue, that that where Luke's standing there in front of the fire of the settlement. All of that is there. It's played again in The Force Awakens. It's played again in that it's played incredibly slowly for the Emperor's theme, and it's because it is in Western cultures very synonymous with death. And so it's not just the storylines that appear; it's even things like music. So
Mhm.
really, really cool. A lot of depth in Star Wars.
It's a good indication that, or it's a clear indication that whether you like a film or not, like whether you like Star Wars or not, doesn't matter. But it's a clear indication that the film's creators, and not just in this case George Lucas, but many other people who are involved in the process, have ideas that say here's all the levels of nuance we can create in this, that are, some are
Yeah,
subconscious, some are just very subtle, some are overt, so that it is layered visual and auditory storytelling. It is not just the actual verbal story in the script that is spoken. All of these other components go into it, because if you didn't need a John Williams to do audio storytelling, you just buy music from someplace and have an editor remix it in the studio and publish it. But you hire somebody like a John Williams, or any number of other great musical performers, or um, um, what is his title? I can't think of his title. It's
oh, composer.
composers. You would, any of them, you work with them because they can come up with they have a skill to come up with, in the case of sound, and music especially, audio storytelling that complement, and if not just complements, helps advance the story in a way that you couldn't normally do without that same music. Like, change the music up and almost changes the scene entirely to something different. You need that component to go along with what's being said, or in many cases not being said. The Mandalorian is a fantastic example of that in the show, where there's plenty that is not being said, and the music and the lighting and the angles of the camera, all of that plays into how you feel about that moment. If you changed any of those pieces just a little bit, it would change the scene entirely. So that all of this goes into a holistic set of storytelling tools that can be used, and when done effectively, make you feel something in your core that you wouldn't just get by watching, a sitcom. No offense to sitcoms,
Yeah,
but like, you don't get it, and you don't get the storytelling in the same way as you do when you add all those layers to it.
yeah. I'm right there with you, and that's what I think that that's why movies like that mean so much to us. That's why Star Wars has staying power, is because it has so much like multi-dimensional depth. And that's why like knockoffs, if you've ever seen any of the Star Wars knockoffs, like Star Crash, like they just this was like a production that they like just they're just mimicking Star Wars, like the entire movie, and even the I want to say that what they did a thing for their score, which was they just recorded like the same instruments 3 or 4 times to make it sound like it's a bigger orchestra. But I mean, they're just like there. That's why no one remembers Star Crash, and everybody remembers. Everybody can remember Star Wars. It has that. That's what makes it timeless, because it's borrowing so much from timeless elements.
Yeah.
I see this question though from Annie Hardy that's in our comments, and I have a lot of opinions on that. I think that's a solid question.
hold on,
And
hold on. I got a
Jeff, if
soapbox
you,
around here someplace. Give me a sec. I'll find
yeah.
it for you.
Oh well, yeah. Please.
I need to have a
I'm ready.
graphic that pops up under your picture for the soapbox moments.
Yeah, no, seriously, like give me my hot take graphic. Because Annie's asking a thing that I feel like, oh my gosh, like this is a problem with when something becomes so culturally renowned like Star Wars, it creates a very different form of gravity. So Annie's comment in the comment section here is, do you think the literary allusions got more nuanced and richer, or do you feel like the nuance dissolved when episodes 1, 2, and 3 were done, and then when 7, 8, and 9 were produced? I have a lot of thoughts on that. I'll hand that off to you first, Jeff, because I'm not joking around. Like I maybe you could sense what I think on that, but
Yes.
I will say this, and everyone can come at me. Jeff's heard me say this. Episode 1 is a solid film. It's not a good movie, but it's a solid film. It is cinematic. Like if it's like one of those things where it's like if I was eating a taco and I was like, it's crunchy, it's got cheese in it, it's this, that, it like hit all, it's like, that's all the things in a taco. Episode one has all the things that should be in a movie. It just is like an engine that can't seem to get started right. Like the pistons can't seem to fire in the right order, but it's got all of the elements that should be in a big cinematic
Mm-hmm.
film, is including original score. All of episode one is filled with an original score that is then just borrowed in episodes two and three, with
Yeah.
only a few, like Across the Stars is added to episode two, and then the Battle of the Heroes. But please, Jeff, I'd love your run at this.
You are the literary person, so I cannot even hope to comment on literary references in any way. I don't, details like that don't stick in my brain. But I will say this: the one thought that I have about the sequel trilogy is, and we have talked about this ad nauseum on the show. Episode 8, to me, is the only one of the three that I could really sit back and see like tremendous nuance and references to previous literature and to hero's journey themes like that. There seems to be so much more, which I think is probably why the film was not as widely enjoyed by non huge Star Wars fans as other films were in the Star Wars series overall. Because I think the way they executed on that episode, because there was so much difference in how these directors brought things together, and I'm going to just call a spade a spade. I think J.J. Abrams did the whole sequel trilogy a disservice. And I don't want to be disparaging to him, but we have talked about this at length. He cannot complete a story. He cannot end a story, and the way that episode 7 played out, it makes me feel like it when Rian Johnson stepped into episode 8. We got a real nuanced and intricate film in episode 8. But because it came after what Abrams did in 7, it felt off. I think it could have, I think and even if they had done, I know this isn't real, but if we had done episode 7 and episode 8, and 7 had been done by almost any other director, including Rian Johnson, I think we could have had just 7 and 8, not had episode 9, and we would have had like amazingly rich and nuanced and impactful stories. But as it was, because we had this first director, second director, started with a third director, and then went back to Abrams again, we end up with this, what feels to me like a kludge. People like to say that it's fan service. There are lots of fan service stuff thrown into episode 9. I don't think it's that. I think that's too simple of an explanation. I think it's much more that we have some people who differed in opinion, a studio that was differing with them, and it caused a lot of complexity that ended up with a lack of a solid through line that anyone could actually agree on, which turns into what we end up getting. The only one of the sequel trilogy that I thoroughly enjoy as a well-made film, storytelling wise and all that, is episode 8. I like 7 because there's a nostalgia there, because it brought me back into the Star Wars movies. I'm like, wow, awesome, we have another Star Wars movie. And I just ignored all the stuff. Oh, well, it's a repeat. You know what? I don't care. I don't care. It got me back into Star Wars. I'm really enjoying this. Thank you for all of that. I mean, it's what brought me back into Star Wars again and go, oh, reading all these books in the lead up to The Force Awakens, I was like, great, I see this movie. Oh, feels so good to be back in Star Wars again. That personally, I just ignored the rest because I enjoyed just being entertained. Episode 8 was the first of that trilogy that actually gave me, wow, this is a well-made film. Episode 9 then to me was just like, I don't want to talk about episode 9. It was just, that's my thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think the prequel trilogy, because there was like 20 years that happened between the original trilogy and then the prequel trilogy, I think actually had like a tremendous amount of cinematic, literary, like so many allusions, like so much depth. There really is a lot of depth in episodes 1, 2, and 3. 1 and 3 most particularly.
Mm-hmm.
You could almost see episode 3 as a retelling, and Jeff, you and I have talked about this, of Hamlet. Yeah. Anakin is paralyzed. He's in paralysis analysis. I don't know what I should do. I don't know what I should do. And it's very like Hamlet-like. there's a reason why. It's because Tom Stoppard, even though everybody says this didn't happen, Tom Stoppard punched up the Revenge of the Sith script. And Tom Stoppard is a famous Shakespearean inspired writer. He's famous for writing Shakespeare in Love. That's why episode 3 reads like Hamlet. And there's so many story cues that are Hamlet, Hamlet, Hamlet. And they really made that story. The problem with those prequel movies is that it's the biggest movie, not the best movie. And that's because George Lucas had all this money and had all this time and had nobody around him telling him, hey, George, like, I don't really think this works. You don't name this Jedi character Qui-Gon until the middle of the movie. Like, maybe we should go back and fix that. And because you can tell in all the background, there's nobody that's putting the reins on it. And art thrives under really good restrictions, and there aren't any. And that's what you get. You get art run amok. And so then everything gets added into this movie. Guess what, guys? We're not going to have four. We're not going to just have one storyline that's ending in Phantom Menace. We're going to have 4 storylines ending simultaneously all at once. There's going to be a space battle. There's going to be a battle that happens at the castle. There's going to be a lightsaber fight. And Jar Jar is going to be doing Buster Keaton stuff, but you know Buster Keaton. You know how the kids love Buster Keaton. We're going to have Jar Jar doing Buster Keaton stuff out there. It's going to be great. So
sorry, I'm sorry. I have to say this. I have to pause for a second. I know I'm interrupting your monologue here, but you say Buster Keaton, and I can just imagine a bunch of people who are not millennials going, Is that like a Bugs Bunny like character or something? Was that like on Animaniacs? I don't know. What Bunny, is that? Yeah. I'm like, Bugs I can just see that, and I laugh at that because I think that's hilarious because you hear that name now and you're like, oh, that's just funny. It's like a cartoon, right? Sorry.
Oh no, it's like cartoons. Like Buster Keaton is so old. Like, but still, like, honestly, there are some funny Buster Keaton things out there. Like, you have to go and find them. This is silent film era stuff. So, you know, as my own kids say, whenever we watch something that's very, very old, they're like, why isn't this in color? Is the television broken? So episode 1 through 3 has all of this stuff. It does have some fan service in there. Like, I honestly question why you put Yoda in the prequels, because I think the reveal of Yoda is actually really cool. Mm-hmm. The sequel trilogy suffers from a different problem. It's actually a different set of illusions, which is, at this time, Star Wars is a cultural phenomenon. We all know it. I can say I don't know why I would say this, but I could be anywhere. I could be like at a Starbucks and say, "No, I am your father," or "Luke, I'm your father," which is the wrong line to read. And people will know what I'm saying, like the all around the world. And so, because of that, the sequel trilogy has all of these allusions to Star Wars, and that's where it suffers. Because rather than being its own unique story, it's like doing what you're saying, which is it's borrowing a lot, not just for nostalgia reasons, but because Star Wars itself has so much in our like our cultural language, like our meme culture, everything that's all in Star Wars. And so they started to tie it back to itself, and it's kind of like a snake eating its own tail. It's like it's empty calories. It's like non-nutritious food in a story. When you're borrowing so much from the previous story, there's nothing that you can either ingest to make something that's new, and instead you just end up right back where it started. And that's why, and you and I keep bringing this up, is The Last Jedi is so good. Because one, it's obviously trying to contradict all of those natural tendencies to make to connect it back to the Star Wars mythos. What are you telling me? Luke Skywalker isn't so heroic in The Last Jedi. By the way, that actually makes a lot of sense. The character is by himself on self-sequestered on an island. I love the line of The Last Jedi where he says, "What, you think I came out here because I wanted to just hang out with people? I came out here to be alone in my failure." It's hard to see Luke Skywalker as one of us, because That's like seeing Superman as one of us, or any of those characters that are those lauded heroes.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, The Last Jedi is playing against our cultural expectations on Star Wars. And that's why it does present so many problems. By the way, that's why so many people, Empire Strikes Back came out, and that was critically panned. People hated it. People hate The Last Jedi for doing the same things now. It is by far the strongest of those movies. And maybe if it wasn't a large company like Disney that had just invested $1 billion in having a Galaxy's Edge and all of these other things that they wanted to keep making this a cash cow, maybe if it was a different studio, they would have said, no, no, it's okay. Episode 9 can keep going down that road, and you will get that Colin Trevorrow Duel of the Fates, which is by far the superior version
100%.
of this movie. 100%. They were like, no, we're going to race back to safety. And episode 9 is all about that safety. There aren't any illusions or anything else that's there. They're trying to make some references here and there. They're trying if anything, it's referencing things that are very popular now. Like the end of that movie, of that movie is the portals scene from Avengers Endgame. I mean, a lesser version of the portal scene from
Mm-hmm.
Avengers Endgame. That's where I think that those movies got lost. So I love that question from Annie, because that's where I feel like when some people feel like say, well, it feels derivative, and it's like, well, yeah, that's because its illusions were referencing itself.
Mm-hmm.
Versus, I gotta give the prequel trilogy some credit. It misses the mark a lot of the times, but they are trying to make different films. Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, sure rhymes with Empire Strikes Back, but it sure doesn't feel that way.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally does. Yeah, thank you, Annie. Thanks everyone else for the questions. This has been fun.
Yeah,
I like
a lot
this.
of fun.
Sometimes it's nice to not just have a like a set of topics we're going to go through and just take whatever we can, because we end up going down these really fun rabbit holes, which is the best.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yep. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks
Normally,
everybody.
and as Jeff knows, we normally have to come in with so many notes.
Yes.
Especially when we have the reviews going on. There's so much work that goes into watching it for fans. Like Jeff and I get to watch a lot of this stuff for fans, and then we rewatch it for the show.
Yes.
And make a ton of notes to be able to come in
Yep.
here and have like structured arguments. So yeah, it's like totally cool to have this be more free.
You know what we should do? When we get back from our work trip, we should maybe do it, since we've got plenty of time right now till new content comes out. Maybe what we do is sit down and do like a Visions watch through or something, and like go
Dude,
watch and do
I am
like
down.
each episode do like a segment on an episode of Visions and just talk it through, because it's both season 1 and season 2, because there's so much cool content. If anyone hasn't watched those yet and you have Disney Plus, go to Disney Plus right away. Go to the Star Wars area,
great.
find Star Wars Visions. They are brilliant. They are absolutely brilliant. They do not follow there's no restrictions. They don't follow any particular canon. They're not, those things, if you haven't watched them, are not about making Star Wars canon or following the canon. That's not what they're intended. They just give artists the free go ahead and say, make something that's within the idea of Star Wars, and let's see what you can come up with. And they're just amazing.
Yeah, and totally like, this is what this franchise needs. It needs like a lot of new blood. It needs a lot of
Yes.
new ideas, because that's where again, my favorite Star Wars property is Andor now. I love Andor
100%.
because
Yes.
it's doing so much that's different. It's trying to tell a very different story just using the pillars of this world. And I think that's what Vision's doing too. And yeah, like, not, I don't like everything that's in Visions, but I really like when you have new ideas. It's when you have new ideas being put into this world, it doesn't feel like new wine in old bottles. It really feels like something unique and special, and I can't recommend it enough.
I think I said this on the last show, but Visions reminds me, if anyone's watched it, I think was it Love, Death, and Robots?
Oh yeah,
on Netflix. If you haven't watched those, yeah, go watch those. It reminds me of a Star Wars version of that, like a melting pot of throw a bunch of stuff in, let people get creative, let's see what they come up with. Maybe some of this can inspire other things that we're working on later on, but like a book came out from one of them. But yeah, cool. Well, happy Friday, everyone. Thank
Uh,
you for being here. We appreciate it. Thanks for all the questions and the conversation. That's what makes this so much fun. And we will see you
yep.
hopefully next Friday, but we'll keep you posted because both of us come in at different times getting home from this work trip. So we may not be here next Friday, but we'll let you know.
Yeah, we'll try to work it out, and we hope to see you not just at the show, but in all of the future stuff that we're planning. Whether it's trips to some of these sites, filming
Yeah.
sites, or even to a lot of the upcoming comic book conventions, which Jeff and I are going to be attending. So we hope to see you
Yep.
there.
Absolutely.
Good
Take
deal.
it easy, everybody. We'll see you soon.
Bye, all.